Cool. Okay, so thanks for joining today. Again, my name's Aaron. I'm one of the employability consultants here at LSBU. So I can help in a number of ways. I do a lot of like one-to-ones, and I do a lot of webinars. And within the one-to-ones, it's things like CVs, cover letters, applications, interview skills, could be careers conversations. So really careers conversations that are quite broad, anything that's related to careers, employability matters, could be careers advice, things like that. And then the webinars that we have include CVs, cover letters, interview skills, Myers-Briggs, so there's a more in-depth Myers-Briggs webinar, resilience, and then some of my colleagues do a LinkedIn and they do a placements one, and we're starting off a volunteering one. But today we're going to be looking at an introduction to Myers-Briggs. So for those of you who aren't familiar with Myers-Briggs, so Myers-Briggs is a personality type indicator. And what it is a questionnaire that you would complete. And the questionnaire looks at different preferences that you would have. So there's 4 different preferences, and I can show you those on the next slide. And the preferences are introversion, extroversion. So this is to do with where you focus your attention. So extroverted people prefer to focus their attention on the outer world of people and things, and then introverts tend to focus on their own inner world and ideas and impressions. It's probably worth noting here that when you complete this test, it's not that you're going to be solely one or the other. So it's not that you'd be solely introverted or solely extroverted. The likelihood is that you'll fall somewhere in the middle, or it'll be varying degrees. So it might be you are 70% one way, 30% another way. So most people would be ambiverts, and variations of being an ambivert, which is a bit of both. But how does that relate to careers if you think about extroversion, introversion? Well, it could relate to careers if you're thinking about different environments you might want to work within, and also different occupations. If you are somebody who doesn't particularly like interaction with others that much, maybe that's not really for you. Maybe you'd rather work with like ideas, concepts, things like that. Maybe you'd rather work with data rather than working with people. Then maybe a role as a lecturer or a role as a teacher or a social worker might not necessarily be for you. It's probably good to add this caveat in here to begin with. Regardless of what the test says and the career pathways associated with your Myers-Briggs type, any of the types, any of the 16 types can succeed in any environment. So it's not so prescriptive that you have to adhere to it rigidly. That's not the case at all. If you want to go and do X, but a test tells you should go and do Y, by all means go and do X. There's nothing stopping you from doing that. Really, what we would use it for is we'll take it with a pinch of salt, but then also just to think about our own qualities and how that fits into the world of work. So you don't really need to go into all of the fine detail and the nuances in order to do that. It's just a tool. So the way in which you take in information is the next one. So sensing and intuition. So people who have the sensing preference tend to take in information through their 5 senses and focus on the here and now. Whereas the people who have the intuition preference, they tend to take in information from patterns and big pictures, and the bigger picture rather, and focus on future possibilities. So if you think about that, sensing might lend itself to more like realistic careers, things that are more hands-on, could be more practical, things that deal with the here and now. You don't really have to think too much about like strategy or abstract concepts and theories and things like that. Whereas the converse may be true for intuition. It may lend itself more to thinking about what underpins this, what's going on here, what's going on that doesn't meet the eye, what's the bigger picture, things like that. So thinking about environments that may lend itself to those ways of working and those ways of thinking. Next, you'd have the way in which you make decisions. So thinking, people who have the thinking preference tend to make decisions based primarily on logic and on objective analysis of cause and effect. And then feeling, they tend to make decisions based primarily on values and on subjective evaluation of person-centered concern. So feeling, if you, I myself, I come out as an EnFJ, and T and F, so thinking and feeling, this is my closest preference, and my furthest preference, so the one I have the largest preference for, would be the next one, judging and perceiving. But if you're stronger with the feeling preference, maybe it would the career pathways associated with that could be where you're working with people, where you're helping people. Maybe that would naturally lend itself to like a counsellor, a therapist, a social worker, a teacher, things like that. But also, you find that a lot of the occupations that would be associated with these personality types, they can be found in lots of different sectors, probably all sectors or most sectors. Probably most is the most accurate thing to say. But you can find them in lots of different sectors. So it's not necessarily like, oh, if you have this, then you must work in education, you must work in healthcare, you must work in finance. You'd normally be able to find your niche within a lot of different sectors. And then finally, how you deal with the outer world. So judging and perceiving. So judging, people tend to like a planned and organized approach to life and prefer to have things settled, whereas perceiving, they tend to like a flexible and spontaneous approach to life and prefer to keep their options open. For this one, I feel like it makes me sound a bit boring, but I definitely fall more into the judger category. And I normally use the anecdote of me and my brother here. My brother is very much a perceiving type. All the others would be the same, very much a perceiving type. But it works for him, and it's really dependent on those people. So thinking again about how you deal with the outer world, that they could lend themselves to different work environments, different occupations. Some occupations are quite structured, and there's an amount of rigidity to them, and you have to follow procedures, or there's at least a framework or structure in which you have to work. Whereas others, you're more of the creator. It lends itself to flexibility and spontaneity and things like that. So if you think a lot of the arts and creative industries, maybe they would lend themselves more to a flexible and spontaneous approach. Not to say that there wouldn't be deadlines and things like that, but so what happens when you complete the test? For those who haven't already done so, it's on a Likert scale, and what you'd have is you'd have starting from no, I'm going into the wrong thing. On the Myers-Briggs one, what you'd normally have is and I think it is still on a Likert scale. You'd have a situation, and then it would be based on introversion, extroversion, sensing, intuition, thinking, feeling, and you'd have to say whether or not you strongly agree, or you strongly like, or you strongly disagree or dislike, and then there'd be 5 points on there, and then based on that, it will give you your overall score, and then your overall score would actually be a 4-letter personality type. So for myself, that's gone on too quick. For myself, I am an ENFJ. So on here, it would be Barack Obama. I think it's safe to say that Barack Obama is a bit more successful and has been more successful in his life than I have been. But it's good to be in the same category as him. And then, you can have a look on here at different celebrities and famous people and what their personality type was. So if anyone's an INFP, if anyone already knows what they are, they're an INFP. I'm very jealous because I'm a big Tolkien fan. So next we have, we're going to quickly think about Myers-Briggs in relation to careers. So people often find difficulty defining what kind of work they want to do, or why a given field makes them feel either comfortable or uncomfortable. And when it comes to careers, sometimes that's equally as useful, knowing what it is that you don't want to do. Or that you don't like doing, because that could then inform your decision and help you to think about, what sorts of areas could I go and work within. So personality type is a practical tool for investigating what works for you, then looking for and recognizing work that satisfies your preferences. Knowing your MBTI type may, for example, prove helpful in deciding what specific areas of law, medicine, education, or business a person prefers. So again, because you have a specific MBTI type doesn't necessarily mean that you have to go and work within a specific sector. You can find your niche, your specialism within certain sectors. And also, this is one of many tools that you can use. And when you're reading the description of yourself, I would always take it, with a pinch of salt. There may be a lot of truth to what's written. Other things may not be as accurate, but just remember, it's a tool that you're using for this reason. And then a person with a preference for introversion may find they're happier doing research, while a person who prefers extroversion may favour a field with more interaction with people. So for myself, I definitely am more extroverted than I am introverted, and I prefer those, that human interaction, working with people. Whereas others, I have friends who, if you said to them, go and speak to people, go and deliver a workshop or a webinar, or go and do one-to-ones, they would look at you like you're mad and they wouldn't want to do it, which is fine. That's their preference. So they would be better suited to a different environment. So work environments can also influence how comfortable you are at your job. So someone with a preference for introversion, for example, who is required to do a lot of detailed work, or think through a problem, may find it disruptive to be in an environment that is too loud or where a lot of interaction is required. When you know this about yourself, you can make arrangements to do your work in a more suitable location or at a time when there is less activity and interference. I suppose this is a bit further on. This is once you actually have the job, and that's probably thinking about the way in which you do work and how you can work within that specific setting, if there are any arrangements you need to make, so you can work to the best of your ability. And then again, I've already mentioned the caveat, but it's probably good to do so again. So the caveat, just because a test states that you might be suited to a specific type of career, does not mean that you need to pursue said career. Any personality type can succeed in any setting, and the test should not be seen as so prescriptive that everything it states must be followed to the letter. So it is always worth having that in mind, bearing that in mind. And also with Myers-Briggs, you really can go down the rabbit hole. You can go down the rabbit hole. In terms of careers, I would say it's not really necessary to do so. If you wanted to explore, your communication style or things that are going on for you, or things that, that Myers-Briggs could kind of illuminate, it's probably better to do that in a one-to-one and actually talk to somebody and talk it out. That's probably, you'll probably get to the heart of the issue a lot quicker in doing that. Cool. Okay, so that is the Myers-Briggs stuff, and then there's kind of correlations which I'll go into in a bit. But this is another model that people might be less familiar with. So this is called the RIASEC model, and also they're known as Holland codes, based on a vocational psychologist, American, called Holland. So that's where the Holland codes come from. So you have in here again, it's the test that you would take. It's a Likert scale, but it really looks at your occupational interests. So with Myers-Briggs, you're really looking at your preferences and your personality type and how they would fit into different occupations, lines of work, and different environments. Whereas with this, it's more looking at your occupational interests, and I suppose at the same time, you could kind of start to consider your strengths as well. So you have 6 different types, and what happens is it's on a Likert scale. You'll normally have between 60 and 100 different questions, and you're given a work duty. So it might be repairing an oven. It could be painting a fence. It could be teaching children to read. It could be creating a YouTube video, whatever it is. And then again, you would have on that scale from strongly dislike to strongly like, and there'd be 5 points. So in the middle, it would be indifferent, or don't mind. And then what would happen is once you've completed the test at those 60 to 100 questions, you're given a 3-letter code, so that's your Holland code, and it would be made up of the starting letters to any of these. So maybe S for social, E for enterprising, C for conventional, R for realistic, I for investigative, and A for artistic. And what you'd have, so my one here is S, I think SEA or SAE. It's been a while since I've done it. It's one of the two. So you would know that my dominant one is social here, and then following on from that, it's either artistic or enterprising, and whichever of those two isn't in second is then in third. And then with that, you can really think about, the sorts of roles that you'd want to go for, what you'd like your work to entail, what your occupational interests are, and that would be occupational interests, things that you're interested doing in your line of work on a day-to-day basis. So for social, that's probably a good place to start. People who like to work with people to inform, enlighten, help, train, or cure them, or to help them live up to their potential. Prefer solving problems through discussion. Usually do not prefer to work with things. Enterprising, so this is to do with tasks. People who like to work with people, influencing, persuading, leading, or managing them for economic gain or for the goals of an organization. So they enjoy leadership positions and dislike details. Conventional order, people who like to work with data, have numerical or clerical ability, carrying things out in detail or following through on others' instruction. Prefer structured situations over ambiguous ones. Next, you have realistic, which is things. So people who have athletic or mechanical ability prefer to work with objects, machines, tools, plants, or animals, or to be outdoors. Preference for working with things as opposed to ideas or people, and they prefer concrete problems over abstract problems. And so you can probably already start to see and hear some of the correlations with Myers-Briggs, with for that one, sensing and in the intuitive, those preferences. So prefers to deal with practical things as opposed to dealing with stuff that's quite abstract, theoretical. Investigative, so ideas, people who like to observe, learn, investigate, analyze, evaluate, or solve problems primarily of a scientific or mathematical nature. They prefer working with ideas as opposed to people, and do not like highly structured settings. So highly structured settings, these may be more of the perceivers rather than the judges. They might like that flexible approach, spontaneity, maybe elements of anonymity, not anonymity, of autonomy as well, not anonymity. Artistic and creativity, people who have artistic, innovating, or intuitional abilities and like to work in unstructured situations using their creativity or imagination. preferring working with self-expressive ideas. So again, you can see with the judging and the perceiving how that may lend itself to the perceiving personality type. And I say may there because it doesn't necessarily have to. So the Holland Code Inventory is one of the most helpful career interest tools available. So it includes 6 interest themes, which I just discussed by John Holland, and the Strong Interest Inventory. So these include the realistic, investigative, artistic, social, enterprising, and conventional domains, aka Ricex. That's where Ricex comes from. Ricex, an acronym. After identifying your preferred interest domains via an interest inventory, the letters can be combined in a similar way to the Myers-Briggs type to form a multi-letter Holland code, e.g. AIS, SIA, IRA. For myself, it was SEA or SAE. I really can't remember which way around it was. I think it was SAE. This can further assist your search for your best career match. So within one of these tests, you rate an activity on the Likert scale, ranging from strongly dislike to strongly like. An example might be helping children to read, S, or fixing a broken bookshelf. Each activity, they're usually between 60 to 100 to answer within the test, correlates with one of the RIASEC letters as stated above. So helping children learn to read would be S, social, and fixing a broken bookshelf are realistic. So then here we have the overlap. So the overlap between the Holland codes and Myers-Briggs correlations. So realistic, people who fall into the realistic type, they may be a sensate, a thinker, and a planner. The investigative types, they may be a thinker and an intuitive. The artistic types, intuitive, feeling, and perceiving. Social may be feeling, and they may have the extroversion preference. So for myself, I would be SAE, and then I would also be ENFJ. So for social, EF, both there. The artistic one, NF, I have the J rather than the P. So 2 out of the 3 there, and then enterprising, E, which I also have. And then conventional would be STJ, so sensing, thinking, and judging. So if you did want to do the tests, you can do so online. For the Myers-Briggs one, you could go on to 16personalities.com, and for the RIASEC, the Holland codes, you can go on to My Next Move, and that will go through the RIASEC questionnaire with you as well. Thank you all for listening. I have about 10 minutes left. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to refer to the chat just to see if there are any questions. And then after that, I'll conclude and I'll tell you things that you can do going forward with those. If you have taken the test and you wanted to discuss any results, you can get booked in with us. If you wanted to get booked onto a webinar to look at the Myers-Briggs stuff in more detail, by all means, please do feel free to do that. So I'm just going to stop sharing my screen for a moment, and I'm going to go to the chat to see if there are any questions. Okay. So it doesn't look like there are. Has anyone done it before? Has anybody done the Myers-Briggs test before? If they have, and they're happy to do so, what is your personality type? What did you get? What was your MBTI type? So for me, it was ENFJ. When I actually look on 16 personalities and I look at my type, there's some general truth to it, and it is really a useful tool in relation to careers. So when you are thinking about careers, it is really quite useful. And it's useful for the things I mentioned earlier, having a think about different environments you might want to work within, and also thinking about the duties of the role. That's a good thing to do. You can actually have a look, think, what will this role entail on a day-to-day basis? And that will help you make really informed careers decisions. And then thinking, is this something that I particularly like doing? Even if it's something, you don't feel you're strong, or that is one of your strengths, but it's something that you'd like to explore or go into in the future, that's absolutely fine. It's a lot of these things may be skills. So if you think, oh, well, extroverts might be better public speakers than introverts, well, public speaking is a skill, and, as with the acquisition of many skills, it comes with practice and it happens over time. So I wouldn't let it deter you if you are interested in going into certain areas. That's not the purpose for it. It's really just for a bit of reflection and to think about, career choices in a more practical, so pragmatic way, thinking about the duties of a role and how it is that your personality would fit into it and how comfortable you would be performing those duties. So, apologies. It doesn't look like there are any questions. So if you'd like to get in contact, I'll quickly pop that into the chat. So bear with me 2 seconds, I'll pop that in there. So you can get in contact. It's careershub@lsbu.ac.uk. If you have any questions but you don't really want to ask them in front of people, by all means, drop us an email, get in contact, and we'll do our best to answer them. We also have different webinars running, throughout the month, each month, sometimes on a fortnightly basis, sometimes on a monthly basis. So Myers-Briggs, what I do in that webinar is I actually go through each of the preferences. So I have a slide and there's a series of statements for, extroversion, introversion, thinking, feeling, judging, perceiving, sensing, intuitive. And you have to read through them, think, even if it's like a 51 to 49% split, which one do I identify with more? And then we talk about what your code is and different, career options, and just thinking about how that might fit into the world of work. So I have that runs on a monthly basis. So if you are interested, go on to, so it's go.lsbu.ac.uk/careers hub. And I've misspelled hub. Where's the asterisk on here? So go.lsbu.ac.uk/careers hub. If you go on there, you can sign up. It goes to take you to Job Teaser. That's our online platform. Sign up on Job Teaser. And what you can do is you can go onto the events tab. So top right-hand corner of the homepage, click on the events tab, and you can get booked onto the Myers-Briggs webinar. I think the next one is, the second or third week in October. I think the second week, but if you just have a look on the events tab, you'll find it on there. We also have a CV and cover letter webinar, so it looks at CVs, cover letters, but what you'd learn in that webinar can be applied to applications more broadly. There's also an interview skills webinar. I literally about an hour ago just finished doing one, talking about different types of interviews, how easy you can prepare for an interview, how to answer interview questions, and to help alleviate some of the anxieties that people feel around interviews. There's also a resilience one, and that feels pretty pertinent now given the current context, and the economic climate due to COVID. So what we look at is resilience when job hunting and going through the recruitment process in case there are any setbacks or anything like that. We also have a LinkedIn one. So if you have got a LinkedIn profile, you'd like somebody to look over it, or you wanted to create one, by all means get booked onto that, run by my colleagues Haley and Hyan. It's a fantastic workshop. And there's also a placements workshop run by them as well. So if you have a placement as part of your course, you're interested in doing a placement or an internship, by all means get booked onto that as well. They'll give you some really useful information, and they'll tell you what you can do in order to find those placements and source them. We also do a lot of one-to-ones. I know I briefly mentioned them before, but CVs, cover letters, mock interviews, and then careers conversations. It may be that you go and do the Myers-Briggs test and you want to come and talk to somebody about the results and how that fits into the world of work. It could be you've looked at Holland codes and your occupational interest, and you think, I don't really know what career pathways are associated with this. I don't know what I want to do with my degree. Anything like that, by all means, come and see us. And the last thing I'd like to say is just try and come and see us for anything career related early on, because what you have at the moment is you have a lot of time on your hands. You're all in your first year. If you're doing an undergraduate program, if you're doing it full time, you have 3 years to go and gain experience, so that when you go out into the labour market, you'll be really employable. You'll have the qualification, you'll also have ample experience. And what that will do is that will put you above the competition, and the labour market is quite competitive, but you at the moment have a lot of time on your hands. So I would definitely utilise that time, even if it's something like volunteering. You could do that for 1-2 hours a week. Over 3 years, that really adds up. That becomes a substantial amount of experience. So definitely some food for thought. Okay, that is everything from me. Doesn't look like there are any questions. Thank you for attending. Hopefully we hear from you soon. We are beginning to open back up as of next Tuesday. So Tuesday from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Will be open. So Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 3 days a week will be open. We're in the Student Life Centre up on the first floor near the Grads Cafe. There's a bright orange signs around. You'll see us. You won't miss us. Pop in, come and have a chat with us. Speak to us about anything related to careers and employability. Apart from that, good luck with your studies, fingers crossed, and we hopefully will hear from you all soon.